Welcome to Chapter 1, Regulatory Framework for Cross-Border Data Transfers. In this chapter, we will delve into the essential aspects of cross-border data flows and the regulatory measures under the Digital Personal Data Protection Act, DPDP Act, 2023. Regulatory Framework for Cross-Border Data Transfers. In today's globalized digital economy, data flows across borders seamlessly, enabling businesses to operate internationally and offer services that depend on the exchange of personal information. However, the transfer of personal data across borders raises significant concerns related to data privacy, security, and compliance with local laws. The Digital Personal Data Protection Act, DPDP Act, 2023, recognizes these challenges and provides a regulatory framework to govern cross-border data transfers. In this chapter, we will explore how the DPDP Act regulates such transfers, ensuring that data privacy is maintained while facilitating international data flow. We will delve into the legal provisions and guidelines, including the concept of data localization, data adequacy, and the conditions under which personal data can be transferred outside India. The importance of cross-border data transfers. As businesses expand globally and digital platforms thrive, the transfer of personal data between countries is critical. Personal data often needs to move across borders to support various business operations, such as customer service, processing personal data in different regions for providing effective customer support, cloud storage and data processing, storing and processing data in data centers across the globe. International transactions. For sectors like financial services and e-commerce, personal data needs to be handled in multiple jurisdictions. However, these cross-border data flows also present several risks. Privacy and security risks. Different countries have varying standards for data protection, leaving personal data exposed to unauthorized access or misuse. Regulatory compliance. Businesses must ensure that their data processing activities comply with the legal requirements of both the originating and receiving countries. To address these challenges, the DPDP Act has been designed to regulate cross-border data transfers and ensure that the privacy rights of Indian citizens are safeguarded, even as data flows globally. Key provisions governing cross-border data transfers in the DPDP Act. The DPDP Act outlines specific provisions under Section 16 to regulate cross-border data transfers. Let's break down the key elements of these provisions. Section 16. Restrictions on cross-border data transfers. Principle of adequacy. Personal data can only be transferred to countries that offer an adequate level of protection for personal data. This means that the country receiving the data must have laws and practices that align with the privacy standards set by the DPDP Act. Example: if a data fiduciary in India wants to transfer personal data to another country, the receiving country must have data protection laws that are comparable to those of India. This ensures that personal data is handled according to similar standards of security and privacy. Adequacy decision by the central government. The central government has the power to issue adequacy decisions for specific countries or regions. Once a country is deemed to have adequate data protection laws, personal data can be transferred there without the need for additional safeguards. Example: the European Union (EU) has stringent privacy regulations, such as the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR. Therefore, personal data can be transferred between India and EU countries without significant additional compliance hurdles. Conditions for data transfers. If the receiving country does not have an adequacy decision, the DPDP Act allows for data transfers under certain conditions. These include standard contractual clauses, SCCs. These clauses are used to ensure that the data recipient will adhere to data protection obligations similar to those in the DPDP Act. Binding corporate rules, BCRs. Large multinational companies can implement BCRs to ensure that data within their organization is protected when transferred across borders. Section 16 of 2, Exemptions to Cross-Border Data Transfer Restrictions. The DPDP Act provides certain exemptions where cross-border data transfers are allowed, even if the receiving country does not meet the adequacy standards. These exemptions include performance of a contract. If personal data needs to be transferred to fulfill a contract between the data principal and the data fiduciary. Public interest. Data transfers can be made for reasons of public interest, such as for international cooperation in law enforcement, public health, or scientific research. Consent from the data principal. The data principal can explicitly consent to the transfer of their data to a country that does not have adequate data protection standards. Data localization requirements under the DPDP Act. One of the distinctive features of the DPDP Act is its data localization provisions, which mandate that certain types of personal data be stored and processed within India. Data localization ensures that personal data remains within Indian jurisdiction, making it subject to Indian law and protecting it from the risks of international data transfers. Section 16 of 4, Data Localization for Sensitive Personal Data. The DPDP Act requires that sensitive personal data, SPD, such as health records, financial information, and biometric data, be stored and processed within India. This requirement ensures that sensitive data remains protected under Indian laws and regulations. Example, a healthcare provider in India must store its patients' health data in data centers located within the country, rather than transferring it abroad. This helps maintain control over the data and ensures compliance with Indian privacy regulations. Section 16 of 5, Critical Personal Data. The DPDP Act also mandates critical personal data to be stored and processed exclusively within India. Critical data is defined as data related to national security, defense, or other areas that the government deems essential for sovereignty and national interests. Example, personal data related to national security, such as defense personnel's information, must be processed and stored within Indian borders and cannot be transferred to foreign jurisdictions without specific government approval. Safeguards for cross-border data transfers. In line with the GDPR and other international data protection regulations, the DPDP Act mandates several safeguards to protect personal data during cross-border transfers. Standard contractual clauses, SCCs, and binding corporate rules, BCRs. SCCs are contractual agreements between the data fiduciary and the recipient party, ensuring that the transferred data will be handled in compliance with privacy laws. BCRs are internal rules adopted by multinational companies to ensure that all of their subsidiaries comply with data protection standards during cross-border data transfers. Privacy shield mechanisms. In addition to SCCs and BCRs, the DPDP Act allows for alternative privacy shield mechanisms to ensure that personal data is protected when transferred to non-adequate jurisdictions. Example, a company based in India may use a certified privacy shield framework for data transfer to the US, ensuring that data is processed in a manner that respects privacy rights. Enforcement and regulatory oversight. To ensure compliance with the cross-border data transfer provisions, the Data Protection Board of India, DPB, is responsible for monitoring, enforcing, and taking action against violations. Penalties for non-compliance. The DPDP Act outlines penalties for organizations that fail to comply with the cross-border data transfer provisions. These penalties are aimed at ensuring that businesses take the necessary steps to protect personal data, especially when transferring it across borders. Investigations by the Data Protection Board. The DPB has the authority to investigate and take enforcement actions in case of non-compliance, including issuing fines, requiring corrective actions, or even blocking data transfers to non-compliant countries. Key takeaways. Adequacy decisions. Data can only be transferred to countries with adequate data protection laws as determined by the Indian government. Data localization. Sensitive and critical personal data must be stored and processed within India, with limited exceptions for specific cases like public interest or consent from the data principal. Cross-border safeguards. When data is transferred to countries without adequate protection, organizations must implement safeguards such as standard contractual clauses, SCCs, or binding corporate rules, BCRs. Enforcement. The Data Protection Board of India is responsible for overseeing and enforcing compliance with cross-border data transfer regulations, including issuing penalties for non-compliance. Conclusion. The DPDP Act establishes a clear and structured framework for managing cross-border data transfers, balancing the need for data flow with the need to protect personal data. By ensuring data localization for sensitive and critical data, and by enforcing strict safeguards for international data transfers, The Act aims to safeguard the privacy and security of personal data while enabling global business operations. In the next chapter, we will explore the penalties and enforcement mechanisms under the DPDP Act, focusing on the impact of the DPDP Act on business operations and the role of regulatory bodies in ensuring compliance and accountability in data protection. Thank you for joining this session. In the next lesson, we will explore the data localization and its implications, diving deeper into how this vital code operates. See you soon. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more valuable legal insights and updates. youtube.com/prolegalminds. If you have any legal questions or need assistance, visit us at prolegalminds.com to connect with our expert team. We're here to help you navigate the complexities of the law with confidence. Stay informed, stay empowered. See you in the next session.